letting everyone come in from the waiting room. Good afternoon. This is the voting hearing of the Boston Cannabis Board. Today is Wednesday, August 19th, 2020. This hearing is being conducted pursuant to temporary changes to the open meeting law due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. This is what allows the board to meet virtually. Today's hearing will be recorded and posted to the city's website. While this hearing is open to the public and the public is welcome and encouraged to attend, no additional testimony will be accepted today. Before I introduce the chairwoman and the commissioners, I want to note that a number of our commissioners have received phone calls on their personal cell phones from individuals inquiring about questions they may have raised in the hearing. If you do not have a relationship with someone to reach out to them, it is wholly inappropriate to reach out to a member of this board. That is why the board staff exists. If you have a question about proceedings, about an application, or about something that occurred in one of the hearings, please email cannabisboard@boston.gov. If it is particular to a commissioner, the staff on the board will discuss with that commissioner if they would like to respond. Again, do not ask other people for commissioner cell phones and reach out to them personally. It's completely inappropriate. And with that, I will now introduce Chairwoman Kathleen Joyce.
Thank you, Leslie. I want to take a minute to introduce the commissioners: Commissioner Lisa Holmes, Commissioner Darlene Lombos, Commissioner John Smith, and Commissioner Alejandra Sankian. Before we begin, I want to take a minute to talk about our rules. Our rules spell out what we as a board can and cannot do. We are a regulatory body that oversees the operations of establishments exercising a license that we issue. We cannot enter into or execute or be a party to the negotiations of a host community agreement. But what we can do is ensure that the negotiations that begin at the community level, at the community meeting, and with community groups, applicants and the district city councilors are incorporated into the host community agreement and appear as conditions on the face of the license. That's our job. To be sure the conditions, or call them negotiations, are on the license and enforced. It's the role of the city to then take those negotiations, if that's what you want to call them, and take those negotiations that began at the community level, that were brought before us as a board and questioned and considered by us, to memorialize them and execute them. Should these applicants receive approval from our board today, this board expects a draft host community agreement to be presented to the district city councilor by Monday, and to be executed by both parties soon thereafter. Our review and approval plays one part in the successful application for licensure by the Cannabis Control Commission at the state level. As an update to the board, and to add to that, moving forward, the host community agreements shall be executed by a member of the corporation council team. And I also want to give the board members an update. As an amendment to the city council tomorrow is hosting an informational session, and I've been invited to testify about our rules and regulations and about an amendment that they recently filed to their own ordinance. This amendment could impact our rules and regulations. Our rules are meant to bring clarity and transparency to the work of this board. I will testify tomorrow. I am hopeful that they will see that the work that we have all put in up to this point in drafting, in adopting these rules, as well as today's deliberations, have resulted in a fair, transparent, and predictable framework with which to regulate this industry in our city. And I want to thank each of you again for the time you've put into drafting those rules and regulations and to getting us to this point today. I'd also like to take this time to recognize Alexis Kachuk for her work up to this date, working with our staff to understand the process in Boston thus far in what is clearly an emerging industry in our city. And I want to make it clear one more time that Attorney Taylor White now certifies our equity applicants, and a member of our corporation council team will be executing and memorializing those host community agreements.
Thank you. As everyone is aware, this board was established pursuant to the ordinance establishing equitable regulation of the cannabis industry in the city of Boston, and is charged with ensuring equity both in to whom these licenses are granted and in the geographical distribution. The board is also responsible for ensuring a 1-to-1 ratio of non-equity to equity licensees. The board today will discuss and vote on 3 applications heard at the August 12, 2020 transactional hearing. Pursuant to the ordinance, each application should be evaluated on diversity and inclusion, 25%, employment plan, 20%, community feedback and public support, 20%, location, safety and security, 20%, parking and transportation plan, 15%. Each application should be considered on its individual merits. As you are aware, the board's role is to determine whether each application is appropriate regarding the proposed time, place, and manner. In today's proceedings, each commissioner has the choice to vote to grant a license, to reject a license, to reject with prejudice, meaning the applicant does not reapply for a period of 1 year, although that is at the board's discretion, or to defer. A majority vote carries. And with that, we will call Verdant Medical Inc. has applied for a recreational cannabis retail license to be exercised at 1589 Blue Hill Avenue in Matapan. The applicant is an equity applicant. Tito Jackson is the applicant contact, and the proposed hours of operation are 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Sunday.
Leslie, should I begin? Okay, thank you. Bear with us as we try to figure out how we go about these discussions virtually. This application was presented to us. There was significant support for the application, and there was some opposition that I'd just like to point out of the Matapan Community Health Center. I just wanted to make sure it got into the record that the applicant has submitted a memo detailing his past work with the Community Health Center and what he plans to do in the future. And I also want to note that what stood out to me was that this application is going to require every patron to enter into a contract where if they had issues as a customer, they will be banned from the establishment moving forward. I think these neighborhoods are really concerned with the quality of life in their neighborhood as these new businesses come in. And I think this applicant took those things into consideration, and it's clear he's worked through them with the community and is willing to continue to work through them with the community. He's made a good faith effort to work with the health center that's a few doors down. And again, as I said, he's outlined his willingness to continue to work with them and has taken into consideration some of the mitigation efforts. I just want to be clear that the hours of operation, as he testified last week, I just want to clarify those with the applicant before we enter into any future enter into any future HCA or conditions on the license, that the neighborhood's okay with that. Do any of the other commissioners want to add to that?
Why don't we go in order of, and this is not in any particular order, it is how the commissioners are appearing on my screen. Commissioner Holmes.
Okay, hi. I vote to grant Verdant a license. Is that what you were asking me?
I think if you, and we're all we're building the bike while we ride it, as I keep saying. So I think we'll go through, and any comments each commissioner wants to make that you would like on the public record, and then we'll entertain a motion after that. I'm sorry, I should have been more.
Okay, sorry about that. I agree with Commissioner Joyce. I think Verdant did its homework. Although there is some opposition from the health center, I did see a willingness for the owner to continue to work in conjunction with them and to make sure that he brings the best possible business that he can to Matapan Square.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Smith.
Hi, thank you. I thought that Verdant had, they basically hit everything on the evaluation criteria, a very strong plan. Again, I think I agree with the first two commissioners on, trying to mitigate the issues affecting the health center, which I think they will work very hard at doing that. So I vote to grant them permission.
Thank you. Commissioner Sankian?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I agree with my fellow commissioners. I thought that the proposal was very strong. As I mentioned last week, one of the things that really stood out to me was the commitment to working with people with CORIs. You know, as we talk about the disproportionate impact of the war on drugs and mass incarceration on people of color, particularly men of color and Black men, I think the opportunity that Verdant is given to people with CORIs, particularly those impacted by marijuana laws, stood out for me, as well as the commitment to helping other businesses grow. I did understand and fully empathize with Matapan Health Center and the closeness to the addiction center. However, I will say, you know, there also are a number of liquor stores in that area as well, one right across the street. So I think that it wouldn't be fair to discriminate against this type of establishment, given that there are other legal substance places very close. And so, and I too believe that Mr. Jackson will work very well with the Matapan Health Center to make sure that their clients feel safe and feel welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lombos?
Thanks, Leslie. I just wanted to point out how important it is that the board and the staff of the commission has put together a scorecard that really helps guide our decision-making in understanding what we're looking for, and applicants are understanding what we're looking for in each of these. And I want to say that Verdant really, even though there's opposition, and even though the owner was able to address some of those things, I do want to point out that all of my scores were so high, and it's really important to really look at each of these sections as key to how we're deliberating over these licensing. Very strong diversity and inclusion plan. As you know, we're looking for not just numbers, we're looking at what are the goals, aspirations, what's the program that's going to get there, and then how are they going to evaluate this. And so Verdant was very good at actually incorporating all of these things in each of the sections that we were asked to score on. So I just wanted to point that out, that this scorecard is very important for us as commissioners and as applicants to know what we're looking for, and to just, again, agree with the other commissioners that Verdant was very thoughtful at their application in all sections of that. And I want to, again, well, we're not voting yet, but I would vote yes.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to grant a license to Verdant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And there's no one opposed. And I should note, for the record, this is the first equity applicant to be granted a license. You will be issued a written decision very quickly, and as the chairwoman mentioned, I know Corporation Counsel is already working on your draft HCA. Commissioner Lombos?
Yes, can I just say one more thing too, is that we know these goals are aspirational, so we look forward to supporting and making sure that we are doing what we can to support you in reaching those goals and these aspirations, including the hiring and employment and reaching those wages and benefits that were such a great part of your plan as well. So for all the applicants, I think that we as a board are committed to that as well.
Thank you. Congratulations. Moving on to the second agenda item. Patriot Care Corporation, holder of an operational medical cannabis dispensary license, has applied for a recreational cannabis retail license to be co-located at 21 Milk Street in downtown Boston. The applicant is a non-equity applicant. Applicant contact is Larry DeCara. And again, I will give each, beginning with the chairwoman, commissioner, an opportunity to make comments, and then after the discussion, we will entertain a motion.
Thanks, Leslie. I just want to go back a minute to our rules and regulations, and I just have to reiterate them, especially in light of this applicant. So we are charged with establishing equitable regulations within this industry throughout the city of Boston. We're required to develop procedures and policies to encourage full participation in this industry by people from the communities that have been disproportionately impacted and harmed by marijuana prohibition and enforcement, and to positively impact those communities. We have approved, as I said earlier, what I think are fair and balanced rules. We've taken the feedback and we've deliberated on them. They are clear and collaborative. One section of those rules, which I think is very applicable in my mind as far as the licensing perspective, is the half-mile buffer zone between cannabis establishments. Should a license be granted to this applicant, I would support granting future applicants and their participation in this area as an equity applicant, especially an equity applicant. I would support granting a conditional license in the future within the buffer zone and would expect this applicant to support the same. This is a downtown neighborhood. The impact on the neighborhood here is huge. The competition cannot be considered by this board. I don't want to see this neighborhood locked down by a non-equity applicant. I want to see participation in this area by equity applicants. And I would encourage applicants to apply in this area. So with those things in mind, I just want to talk a little bit about what we received that was part of the record, the downtown bids. What is this? This is their conditions they would like. And again, going back to our rules, we received this letter from the downtown bid, a letter of non-opposition with about 13 conditions that they have worked out on their own with the applicant. And these are, what we can do is we can consider operational conditions. Things between the bid and this applicant that are private negotiations aren't things that we will consider. But I want to go through them because I think they're important. I think it's important for the public to know that these negotiations that started at the community level, that were brought before us, that have been memorialized in writing, some of these things will make it into the host community agreement and on the face of the license. And again, these things go to the quality of life in the neighborhood here. They've agreed to operate for the first 6 months, adult use by appointment only. And they have agreed to no lines or tolerating any lines at this location. They've taken into consideration the neighborhood's concerns about public smoking of marijuana, so they've agreed to no pre-rolled marijuana products. They will not allow for purchases under $35 to discourage quick, small-scale impulse buys. They will insert an educational card in each purchase, reminding customers about the smoking marijuana in public is illegal. One thing that's important, I think, at this location is the fact that it is already a licensed medical establishment that does allow people under 21 to have access to it because it's a medical. It's medical. They're going to do a triple check system for IDs, and this is very important because this proposal is for a co-located applicant. Their hours will be 9 to 7. Again, I want to confirm those to make sure they're part of the host community agreement and appear on the face of the license. And any security plan, in addition to being shared with BPD and the bid, has to be shared with this licensing board. We have to also approve it. They've also agreed not to seek an additional license for on-site consumption or delivery at the location. And any changes to these conditions will have to be brought back to this board. So any separate agreement, I want to make that clear, any separate agreement between the neighborhood and the bid, that's a private matter and does not implicate the host community agreement. Some of these conditions will be incorporated into the host community agreement. So I just want to make it clear that what we do have in front of us as the letter from the Boston bid, those negotiations started a long time ago. They were brought before the board. We considered them last week. We've considered them between now and our last meeting, and they will be, if approved, they will be part of the host community agreement. We did receive letters of support from the district city councilor. Their transportation plan, while they don't have parking because of this location, they do have access to a lot of public transportation. And I was satisfied with their employment plan. And I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Holmes.
Yes. Well, originally I asked the question last week about their proposal on hiring Corey applicants, and they really didn't have a good answer, but did state that they would get back to us. And as of yesterday, there was materials submitted that answered that and gave a plan on how they would go about hiring applicants with Corey's. So for my benefit, I kind of feel they satisfied my question, and they showed a plan that they did have something, or they put something in writing that showed they had a plan.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
Thank you. Same as Commissioner Holmes, I was asking a question about hiring people with Corey's since they're disproportionately impacted. So what they mentioned in their plan, and still thinking about, the program you have through community colleges. Are you really helping people of color enter those programs? Are you providing some kind of stipend, those kinds of things? So I remain a little concerned, but they have a very strong plan and would want to follow up with them later on to make sure that we're holding them to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sankian?
Thank you. I want to first mirror Commissioner Joyce's early comments about being able to grant a conditional license for an equity applicant within this area. This is a very fruitful area for the industry, and for it to be locked down by a non-equity applicant, I think would be unfortunate. I do think they meet a lot of the criteria within, and I want to thank Commissioner Lobos for emphasizing that we're using our score sheets to talk about various aspects of these applications, and clearly location is a great one. Clearly, past history having already the medical marijuana, and then the agreement with the communities are very strong. I have a couple concerns. I do think that I'd like to see more in the diversity and inclusion plan. I think what was provided for us was pretty scant, and it was just within the presentation, and then one additional document. So I don't think it was specific enough on goals and how they are planning on promoting diversity throughout the ranks. So I would, love to see more information on that. And then within the employment section, there's a part of it that talks about a peace agreement. And recently it's become unclear whether that is something that is in place or not. I understand that it's in place with 1199, but 1199 is no longer is not longer engaged in that industry. So I would love to hear more information on that. I believe that at the hearing last week, they agreed to signing a peace agreement with UFCW for, but I don't know that for sure. So those are my two hesitancies in this applicant.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Lombos?
Thanks, Leslie. I agree with Commissioner Sankian. I have serious concerns actually about the diversity and inclusion plan, particularly on my scorecard. They ranked very low because I didn't see any actual goals, program that's going to get you there, and then metrics. I did appreciate the track record of the business. But I don't think that that's actually what we're scoring on. We're actually looking at what's the future plans of this particular license. And I do think that the diversity and inclusion in the very beginning of our scorecard is also not just a standalone, it's how it is incorporated in every single part of the plan. And I don't see that in the presentation or in the materials. They got high scores from me on parking, location, and very low scores on community feedback, employment, and diversity inclusion. So again, I want to stress how important utilizing the scorecard is in and understanding how it is that each commissioner is actually thinking about each of these sections, and how important it is that both diversity, inclusion, and employment are two very important pieces of why this board was set up. So I don't think it was a strong application on those two pieces and have big concerns about granting this license as is.
Right, thank you, Commissioner. I will first entertain a motion, and then should the board vote to grant this, we will return to continue the discussion on these proposed conditions. As the chairwoman noted, some of the proposed conditions are appropriate for incorporation onto any license that's issued, but some are more so between the applicant, licensee, and the community group. Is there a motion?
Thanks, Leslie. I will make a motion, but I just feel it's so important to say again, the fact that the cannabis industry is going to be a multi-million-dollar industry in the city of Boston, that this buffer zone is very important to me as a board member, and I know it's important to the other board members as well. So please keep that in mind. This is a very highly sought after location in the city of Boston, and that is not lost on us. And with that, I make a motion to grant this license.
Is there a second?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Can we grant it conditionally based on the concerns that board members have?
So you're proposing to grant conditionally pending submission of additional information from the applicant regarding diversity and inclusion and the employment plan?
Yes.
I think that's an acceptable motion. So Commissioner Holmes, would you like to make that motion?
Okay. So I make a motion that we conditionally grant Patriot Care conditional license based upon further information being sent into the board on the concerns that were brought up by board members.
I
have a question about that motion.
Yes.
So if we are still not satisfied with additional information and it's conditionally granted, what happens then?
That is an excellent question, Commissioner. I would say that it would be.
I think we either vote to grant it today with the conditions. We work with the applicant to get the conditions in a place that we're all comfortable with. Because we're not going to be able to have them come back and have another hearing.
I think the options are we could conditionally grant, and pending sufficient information filed by the applicant that the board together thinks is sufficient on those points. That's one option. Sorry.
Could we if it seems like, I'm not sure if, well, I was going to say if people want to see more, then it would be more of a deferment. I'm not comfortable with a conditional granting of a license based on what I've seen so far on diversity and inclusion and employment. So if there's a deferment and we are able to see more, then I would be more comfortable with a deferment and taking up this vote later, or simply granting no.
I would agree. I would agree with the commissioner on that. I think it would just be, logistically, I think it would just be too difficult to ensure that these items will be put in place. And the fact that there would be no way for us to then to say that they're unsatisfactory moving forward with the condition already granted. I think a deferment or just people's votes would.
So we could, I think that's a very good suggestion. We could defer the vote, request the additional, we would be keeping the record open, request the additional information from the applicant, and then this would be placed it would not be a subsequent hearing, but it would be placed on the September agenda, voting agenda under old and new business.
So do we have to make a motion to
Yes.
defer? Okay, I make a motion to defer the vote.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, all in favor. So we will defer the vote to the September hearing. The board staff will reach out to the applicant for additional information regarding the diversity and inclusion and employment plan. Item 3, Massachusetts Citizens for Social Equity, LLC, has applied for a recreational cannabis retail license to be exercised at 561 Dudley Street in Roxbury. The applicant is an equity applicant. Applicant contact Michael Ross. Beginning with Chairwoman Joyce.
Thank you, Leslie. I think this was a strong application. I think the applicant described in his testimony and in his subsequent materials a very strong plan for the different categories that we use to evaluate these applications: diversity, employment, community feedback and support, location, parking. He did mention that he plans on coming back to the board should delivery become an option. And for those reasons, I vote to support this application.
I will change up the order and say Commissioner Lombos.
You got me, Leslie. So thank you. I really do think that this is the reason why this commission was set up, for applicants like this. I very much wholeheartedly want to vote to support this application. I also want to reiterate what I said earlier, was how we can best support as a commission after granting these licenses to make sure these equity applicants and licenses are successful. And I want to see if there are ways that this board could also think about how we can coordinate with the state for resources, for support of equity applicants. Particularly, I know that the state has over $100 million that has been collected through fees and licenses. I'm not exactly sure where that money is going, but I would love to hear from the state board and see if there's ways that we can figure out how to support our equity applicants. So I definitely would vote in favor of this applicant.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner St. Gian?
Thank you. I agree with my fellow commissioners. I thought this was a very strong application through and through. Also highlights just the importance of expanding equity within this industry. And I think these two applicants really demonstrate that, and also that they're from the neighborhood that they're proposing their shop to be in. I think that says a lot about who they are and their track record of employing people from the neighborhood, people with quarries. I feel very comfortable that they will have a strong commitment to making sure that those that have been negatively impacted by past practices and regulations will now be able to benefit from this expanding industry, and I fully support their application.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Smith?
Thank you. Based upon the evaluation criteria, I thought their plan was very strong, and given their neighborhood ties, they will continue to employ people from impacted communities. So I definitely vote to grant them in favor.
Thank you. And Commissioner Holmes?
Again, I was very impressed with these young gentlemen on their business savvy, and the fact that it's a family business and that they really are expanding into the community. And the only question I had, which they hadn't answered yet, and I'm sure it's just a very minor detail, was they still didn't have a plan on their money transfer and banking and that aspect. And I think it was only because that they're working as a family with, homegrown resources. So at the moment, that probably wasn't something that they were actually concerned with at the time. But other than that, I think they're a strong applicant, and I would vote to grant them a license.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to grant the license to Mass Citizens for Social Equity.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And no one is opposed. Congratulations. This is our second equity applicant. And on old and new business, slightly awkward to be reading old and new business, but there's a motion for the appointment of Leslie Delaney Hawkins as Executive Secretary pursuant to the board's rules and regulations. This position is not compensated.
I make that motion, and I thank Leslie for the time she's put in on behalf of the board as the uncompensated Executive Secretary. She's gone above and beyond, and I make a motion to support that.
Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Fortunately, no one opposed. All right. So this concludes the first voting hearing of the Cannabis Board. Thank you, everyone. As a reminder to anyone who's listening, our transactional hearings are the second Wednesday of the month, which will be September 9th. And we will be working in the coming weeks to finalize the agenda for our next hearing. All right, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.